Hey everyone, thanks for joining the It's All About Football podcast, and thank you again. It'll be an interesting episode to delve into because, well, sometimes if you have to enjoy the outdoors, well, you have to go and take full advantage of it, and this will probably be one of the last times I can enjoy this because the warm weather is slowly coming in many of you in the snow and in the cold still saying you talking about cold weather. Well, it being cold enough to have to be wearing a long sleeve shirt, but also still warm enough, toasty enough to go work outside. So what did I do? I took full advantage. And it was something that I started thinking about just the other day because what a time in South American football as you start to see the end of certain generations begin to emerge. The other day, I don't want to talk about Colombia anymore. I already did. And maybe there's a lot of things that I did leave out. But there's another one that is slowly coming to an end as well. And that one's been agonizingly slow because we've seen it slow down and get long in the tooth 4 years ago, 5 years ago, as a matter of fact, now, even 6 years ago, as a matter of fact. I know I'm repeating, but Chile and this golden generation they have has all of a sudden left this very bittersweet legacy. For Chileans, it's going to be sweeter than bitter. But if you look at it from the outside, it ends up being one where you might end up being confused as to what to think. There's a certain aspect about it that will have, like many arguments do, its defenders and its detractors. The defenders will say, well, Chile was able to do things that it never did in any generation prior to this one. The people that are the detractors will say, yeah, but they didn't qualify to 2 World Cups. They didn't qualify to 2 World Cups. And the results were there. And not only that, those factors aren't necessarily, and I want to verbally underline the word necessarily, the problem of that generation. The generation went out and competed and won and lost like any other generation did, but also put Chilean football on the map in terms of the national team, in terms of its notoriety, in terms of its competitive nature, in terms of its playing style that was suffocating at times and didn't allow opposing teams to truly go out and play the way they wanted to play. But as years go by, erosion starts to take place. You start to see certain diminishing effects of that type of play. Injuries started to wear players down. Form at their club started wearing players down. A lot of those factors ended up being key in the downfall of the Chilean national team. Sadly to say. But it wasn't just that. There was nobody behind to be able to take that baton and continue the relay race. When it's wonderful to have a golden generation and this type of generation and that type of generation. But if you don't have someone else to take over and say, okay, well, you might be able to play 90 minutes, you might be able to play 60 minutes. Well, I'll take over those 30. Or you might only be able to play 30. Well, let me take over. I can do 60. Or, you know what? Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. And this player will take over from here on out. You didn't see that with Chile. Yeah, of course, you see it with physical bodies. You do see that. And it ends up being quite prevalent. And it's part of human nature and everything else you want to say. But there was no one else. And that ends up being an organizational issue, which was part of the problem with this Chilean national team and this Chilean FA. When Marcelo Bielsa is him, and you might agree with him or you might disagree with him, but he has non-negotiables, Marcelo Bielsa. And he does come across in a certain manner depending on who you are. I can understand that. But he also ends up being an individual that doesn't renounce to his principles or to his style of work, and that's why he was so adamant in Chile to have things done a certain way. Once that happened, then Chile started to see the benefits of it. Obviously, he leaves because of the president that hired him, ends up losing the election. Someone else comes in. He didn't want to work for them, and that's acceptable. That's just pretty much a corporate move, like any other individual would do if they were faced with that situation, or if they had the luxury to face that situation in that particular way. So in comes Jorge Sampaoli. He ends up taking over. He ends up getting a lot of the glory. Then so does Juan Antonio Pizzi, who wins the second Copa America. That was the year after Sampaoli leaves and ends up, just leaving in a tumultuous Chilean national team. Of course, everyone remembers during that Copa America in 2015 where Arturo Vidal ended up crashing his Ferrari. And the casinos, all that extracurricular stuff also ended up wearing the patience of the fans a little bit thin. So when you look at all these factors coming in, you see that there's no continuity, there's no development in Chilean football. And then the face of the national team now, I mean, if Arturo Vidal remains with the national team, he'll still be the face. If Alexis Sanchez, he'll be one of the faces. But let's say they don't. The face of the Chilean national team was not even on the Chilean national team a year ago. That's Ben Brereton, a man from Blackburn. And I point him out because of what he's been able to do. And what he's been willing to do, the commitment he's shown to show all of that. But Ben Brereton's still mighty green for that particular responsibility, that particular weight. Mind you, he's done a sensational job in doing so. He's been phenomenal in taking in the obligations of being a player that's beloved within the Chilean football circles. And he's done it with very little Spanish. And he's been able to go and do all those things with a great deal of importance, with a great deal of dignity, and more importantly, with a great deal of commitment. But with all this said, we talk about Ben Brereton, and that's a big load to haul, especially in a year where obviously he's not going to go to the World Cup, but he's going to be able to use the performance, his form with the Chilean national team to end up with a Premier League side in the next year or in the next few months. Chances are that will happen. Whether with who? Well, that'll be the next question. That'll be the next thing that we'll have to figure out. But Chile didn't manage things well. Pizzi leaves. Okay, Reinaldo Rueda comes in. And in typical Reinaldo Rueda fashion, it was just like, meh. Very cold, very, very cowardly tactical football. Very conservative football where he didn't maximize the players that he had. Then again, very tough to do so when you're dealing with a generation that might have needed to see the door out. Some, not saying all of them, but some might have needed to see the door out a few years ago. But since there's no one to take their place and no one challenging them, they continue. And if one World Cup wasn't enough, well, what happens now with two? That ends up being the big question mark. All of this happens. Reinaldo Rueda leaves, and the president of the Chilean FA promised. This is the problem again with having people that come in with grandiose notions with grandiose promises. That when they don't deliver, then the project has already fallen flat on their face. There was a lot of talk about Matias Almeida becoming the coach of Chile. And Matias Almeida was done, and Matias Almeida was confirmed, and Matias Almeida was signed, sealed, and delivered, and Matias Almeida was going to be coming to the country, and Matias Almeida was finally going to offer this, and he was going to offer that, and he was going to offer this, and all of a sudden, it did not happen. You had name after name after name being thrown out, which at some point, it seemed more a sign of desperation than an actual plan. A sign of desperation more than an actual plan in Chile. And when they bring in Martín Lasarte was pretty much option F, option G, plan H to a certain extent. So when you have that, and a coach that really didn't offer a lot of confidence, didn't offer a lot of inspiration in a moment where a lot of confidence and inspiration was needed to be able to take on a mountain of a challenge, it never appeared. And in Chile, at this stage in their generation, were, for the most part, the last two matches that they had. The match against Brazil, there was a lot of talk about them fighting until the end. There was a lot of talk about them battling until that last whistle. But it was more of a long and extended death. It just seemed long and painful to see. Against Brazil, they just absolutely got hammered. Yeah, they had a goal disallowed, okay. But outside of that, they did nothing. Against Uruguay, it just seemed like a slow and painful death as well. And they did nothing. So it's now more of a whimper than any type of fight they're able to put up. And it was sad to see the fans at San Carlos de Apoquindo just kind of resigned when they started clapping and they started applauding Arturo Vidal, saying thank you. But you know what? It's time. When the fans started doing that, every time he'd get the ball, you hear the fans. They'd be clapping. They'd get an ovation. Alexis Sanchez, the same thing too. You were depending on players in their mid-30s to be able to take you to one more World Cup when they hadn't been able to do it the last time around. And the players behind them, as I say, and I'll reiterate once again, they weren't able to pull their weight. There's a lot to be looking at if you're Chile. So what's going to happen next? What's going to happen now? What am I going to do? What are we going to do? How are we going to fix this? And we still haven't seen it yet. And to be quite honest, if it weren't because the 2026 World Cup qualifiers are going to be so generous for South America, I could truly say that they might not even be in 2026 either. Because you might see Venezuela emerge once again, or emerge once and for all, I guess you could say. Bolivia might get a good run, especially at home. Maybe. Paraguay might end up having some interesting players emerge finally, and once again begin to battle as they too will be out for the third consecutive World Cup. Chile, I don't see the interesting players. I don't see the potential. But if they do make it, which I hope they do, it'll have to be with a whole new cast of characters. Before we continue, I just wanted to thank you in listening. I really appreciate you joining this little project that I'm starting on. Hopefully, it starts snowballing in this 2022. I just wanted to reach out and ask one thing. I'm not one about asking too much, but I'll do an exception in this particular case. I wanted to ask you to support this little endeavor I'm embarking on as it starts to morph into something a little bit bigger, and I'm truly excited about what the future has in store. So please make sure you support if you can. If you can be able to contribute monthly, just 99 cents a month is fine. If you want to more, I will eternally be grateful, so much so that I'll mention you on a future episode or future episodes, because you would be one of the engines that would make this project really go into what I would want to do, which is go and talk to some people in the world of football, not just virtually, but now with this pandemic, hopefully keeping my fingers crossed, now kind of entering its final phase. As I said, I'm keeping my fingers crossed as I say this. Being able to go and talk to some of the characters, some of the protagonists of the world of football, and be able to do it one-on-one, inviting them to a cup of coffee or a pint of beer or whatever it may be, and be able to chat with them about football, life, and other things that seem rather interesting in terms of their lives, and how they are able to do what they do or able to do what they did. So please make sure you support. It'd be great. Just a little bit is fine. A lot is better. But obviously what I want to do is to be able to have you here in this endeavor and be part of this as we end up growing together. And I really appreciate everything that you're doing just by listening as well. So thank you so much. And let's move on. Let's continue. Hey everyone, well, let's do the mailbox segment or the mailbag. Whatever. Mailbox, mailbag, sure. Either one. Okay, you put the information in one, I read it, and here we go. All right, well, first one comes over from Twitter. It's Vikneshraj 10. Will Stiven Mendoza return to Chennai FC? Any possibilities? Look, Ceará is looking to get rid of players. There's some economic situations there is an economic situation that Ceará is going through. At one point, they were reporting that about 25 players would be leaving on loan or be sold, or their contracts would be released or rescinded to a certain extent. Stiven Mendoza is not one of them. Mendoza has been one of the players so far this year that has been able to play the most minutes. There is no sign that Dorival Jr., who's the new coach over at Ceará, is going to let him go. They have to keep a certain base of their players, because not only will they be playing in the Brasileirão, they will also be playing in Copa Sudamericana this year. So they do need to start making some signings. They do need to start doing that. And so in short, he's staying for now. Now, will that change at the end of the year? Maybe. He does have a contract until 2023. That could be a possibility. That could be a chance. But as of right now, it looks like he's staying and he's not going anywhere. Now, you talk to me in 2 months, that could be a different story. I hope that's a good enough answer. Next question. Neil. Neil, man. Oh, man, Neil. Why? And he says that. Why? If the decision is fair, they don't owe an explanation. Why? And he's talking about this after I mentioned that as per protocol, it is prohibited to show or share VAR audio communication during the decision-making process in a game. The only explanation was that the protocol that has been established, not by, and this is of course after the workshop that was done, or media day that was done for VAR in Argentina. That was one of the things that they talked about, because the question was asked whether audio would be shown or audio would be shared with fans during broadcasts to understand, which I'm completely in favor of, to completely understand how and why the decision-making process in a call, whether if it's a penalty, whether if it's a player getting sent off, whatever the case may be, hearing the process of the referee on the pitch and VAR assisting him. Remember, keep in mind, VAR does not make decisions. So whenever you hear someone in media saying, oh, VAR made the call, they do not make the call. That's complete and utter bullshit. So please, and I will call anyone out that says that, because it is not true. VAR is not there to make calls. VAR is there to make a decision, or make a recommendation, I should say, for the referee. Ultimately, the referee says yellow card, red card, penalty, no penalty, free kick, penalty, whatever the case may be. The referee has the ultimate decision in that. VAR only recommends. But as far as the process of coming to a conclusion, as per I guess it's IFAB and FIFA, mostly IFAB, of course, they're the ones that have decided to not share this audio, which like I said before, I'm in favor of that audio being shared, so people understand, well, okay, I might not agree with it, but that's the way it was seen, and that's the way they saw it from that angle. That's the way they're ultimately, the word interpretation in VAR cannot be used. They have to use a certain criteria. Does it meet A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever the case is in those types of situations? If it meets A, B, C, D, E, F, G, if all the boxes are ticked, then it is a foul. And it's that. If that process is understood, how they get to there. Did this happen? Yes. Did this happen? Yes. Did this happen? Yes. Did this happen? Yes. Did this happen? No. Well, then it doesn't get switched. It has to be 100%, not 99.5. It has to be 100% concise to be able to make a decision to overturn a call on the pitch. An offside, a goal that's disallowed for an offside. If the offside is or if there was a foul, better yet, I think that's a better example. If a foul was made and the referee calls it, okay, fine. If the referee doesn't call it and then VAR shows that there was a foul or a potential foul, they say, hey, by the way, Mr. Referee, go see the replay, because at this point there was a foul, about 15, 20 seconds before the goal was scored. The referee goes and sees it. He says, you know what? I don't see the foul. Therefore, it's a goal. Every single box has to be ticked in order for a referee to... dog sub. I forgot dog sub. Same thing, same criteria. Okay. So, no, according to protocol, it is not allowed. There are certain confederations, I know CONMEBOL does it. I'm not sure if CONCACAF does it. UEFA, I haven't seen, so and I can't go and say 100% that they do or they don't. I could lean more towards they don't. But I know for sure CONMEBOL, during World Cup qualifiers, during Copa Lib, they don't share the audio right away. They share it a little bit out, maybe about 6 to 12 hours after the match, just to offer a bit of transparency, I guess. But at that point, you start to understand why a decision was made. You might agree with it, you might disagree with it, but that's a completely different issue. So those are the two questions that I received as of right now. Again, guys, send me questions on Twitter, on Instagram, and make sure that I'll be more than happy. And if you do send me those questions, I will usually answer. Check out the next episode. So I'll start doing that, and I'll put an email up in a little bit, I'll create an email so you guys can send me questions and suggestions and things of that nature for the future. Guys, it's been a pleasure. I'll talk to you soon.